welcome to everyone who is watching us either live or in a future recording. This is, of course, the HAPI 6.10.0 release, the Smile CDR 2023.11.R01 release. We have codenamed this release ZED, so this is our release webinar. Before I say anything else, I am going to say I am a little bit off my game this morning. Anyone who knows me well will probably agree with the fact that I am sometimes not the most organized person. Today is no exception to that rule. I managed to book this on the final day of a 2-week vacation, and that is completely my own fault, just a complete lack of planning on my part. So I'm coming off 2 weeks traveling around Portugal, which has been an absolutely lovely experience. But boy, am I ever not feeling like I'm well prepared for this morning's webinar. So we're going to muddle through that. I am sure we'll do fine. The small team have done an amazing job getting this all prepared for us. So there we go. Forgive me if I seem like I'm a little bit rusty. Today's agenda, we are, as always, going to talk about what is new in both HAPI and Smile CDR. We're going to talk about what's going on with our clinical reasoning product family as well. Something that we don't almost ever do on this webinar, but we're going to do today is we're going to talk very quickly about an update to the HAPI HL7 V2 project. That's the sister project to HAPI and the original HAPI project, in fact. And we'll talk a little bit about what's next, what we're going to be working on for the next quarter. As a reminder, we do these webinars, and for that matter, we do our releases once a quarter, so every 3 months. We, as many projects do, we have a code name. We've been cycling through the alphabet with our releases, and we have finally come to the end of the alphabet. So this release is codenamed ZED. This is our final release of the alphabet, and after this, I guess we got to pack it up and never release again. Either that or cycle back to the start of the alphabet. And yeah, I guess that's probably what we'll end up doing. In fact, it is what we're going to end up doing. We've actually got a theme for our next set of releases starting next year, and I'm not going to give it away right now, but we're gonna keep on cycling through letters, but hopefully spice it up with some themes for next year. So I'll talk to you guys about that in February. And until then, let's talk about ZED. For anyone who is not aware, ZED is the way that we say the letter Z up here in Canada. Up, I guess, if you're in the US, or maybe not up, depending on where else in the world you are. We, of course, get that word from UK English, which is, I don't know, Canadians speak a funny hybrid of American and UK English. We do lots of things like both, but I'd say we lean more towards the UK flavor, and in the UK they say ZED. Apparently, according to statistics, 70% of Canadians say Z and 28% say Z. I don't know what the other two, I can't imagine what the other 2% say. I'm going to be honest, I mostly say Z. I just think it's easier, and it just comes more naturally to me. One of the side effects of being Canadian, you live next to the largest media market in the world, and we watch a whole lot of American TV growing up, and I think I just learned the word Z way better than I ever learned the word Z. So that word comes better to me. Anyone who didn't grow up in Canada is probably missed out entirely on ZED. ZED was the teddy bear mascot. This is completely meaningless to anyone who didn't grow up in Canada, and anyone who did is probably saying "ah" and fondly remembering ZED, who was the grocery store, or not grocery, the mascot of the department store Zellers, which was a discount chain that I think eventually went on to be owned by the Bay. I don't think it originally was, but the Bay remains as a big department store. In fact, still have stores both in Canada and I think a couple of international stores even. So there we go. Don't we all love ZED, fellow Canadians? As always, we've got a playlist that we've put together. A couple of people internally have decided that this is our best playlist yet. We were actually going to try and put this to a vote, I think, once we've got 10 of these things under our belt. Really good playlist, though. There's some really good tunes in this thing. I gave it a few listens over the last couple of weeks since it's been finished, so highly recommended. This QR code and this link will take you to our the Spotify page that has our playlist on it. The very final slide of this deck, which I will, of course, put up for a while at the end, has the link again. So if you don't catch it now, feel free to catch it later. And I'll post that in a few places as well. So lots of chance to get to the playlist. So let's talk about what's new in this release, because we've got lots to talk about this time around. First off, and this is the feature that I am the most excited about, we have been working on this for the last two releases. I've dropped a couple of hints about it in previous release webinars. Up until now, it's been hidden behind a hidden feature flag because we haven't felt like it was ready yet to see the light of day for more broad consumption. We now feel that it is. We have integrated an integration layer into Smile CDR based on Apache Camel. If you're not familiar with Apache Camel, Camel is this amazing open source platform supported by the Apache Foundation. Um, that supports basically enterprise integration patterns, EIPs, and lets you sort of connect things to each other and do all kinds of message routing and queuing and syncing and waiting and error handling and all the things that you need to do when you build big, complicated, data-bound applications. Increasingly, we think of Smile not just as a repository, but as an integrated data fabric that supports all kinds of functions and core capabilities that you can use to data enable and FHIR enable your enterprise. A big part of that, of course, is the ability for you to handle data, to queue data, to route data appropriately, to respond to events, to handle failures, to be resilient, all of those good things. And Camel allows us to do all of this. We've been building Camel as this sort of hidden feature, as I said, based on a single customer project we've been doing. But all of the work that we've been doing has been with the aim of releasing it as a core capability in the product. And we are doing that today. So I am incredibly excited about all of that. If you're wondering why you might want to take advantage of this new capability, what I'm going to do is illustrate that with a pair of diagrams. So there's obviously with a product like Smile, as you build a data fabric, you're constantly sort of moving data around. There's all kinds of data flows you might want to consider. A really simple one is ingesting HL7v2 data, converting it to FHIR, and storing it in a FHIR repository. Why would you want to do that? I mean, maybe you've got an EHR that spits out HL7v2 data, or you've got some sort of legacy system that spits out HL7v2 data. HL7v2 is a very common protocol in the world of healthcare applications, so lots of systems speak it, even if they haven't moved on to FHIR yet. So it's quite common. We've got lots of customers using these capabilities. Like we've got native ability to automatically convert all kinds of HL7v2 content into equivalent FHIR content and store it in the database. All of that happened within Smile and still can happen within Smile completely synchronously. So this diagram shows the sort of before state. The before state doesn't go away. This flow meets lots of needs today and will continue to exist and meet those needs in the future. But let's say a sending system sends us an HL7v2 message. We can convert it to FHIR. It ultimately converts into a FHIR transaction bundle. We will then store it in a database, which is great. But what if you are building a health information exchange, which is a type of system that we're seeing increasingly getting built around the world, and we are helping lots of people around the world build health information exchange architectures. Here is a really simple way that you might want to enhance the flow that I just showed below. So let's say you want to decouple the various components of Smile. You want to receive the message, but then throw it on some sort of guaranteed delivery queue, which sort of ensures that the message gets stored, the sending system gets an acknowledgement, but the message will stay on that queue until we're able to process it. So even let's say the database is under maintenance or there's some sort of problem with some part of the rest of your infrastructure, you know that no data is going to get lost. So you can stick that data onto a delivery queue. It can get pulled off the queue, automatically converted to FHIR. It can then go into a router. And let's say we've got two different databases, two different FHIR repositories. And maybe some data is going to go to one, some data is going to go to the other. Maybe some data is even going to go to both of them. With this, I'm going to take advantage of two capabilities of Camel, the ability for us to do queuing, basically asynchronous messaging, and the ability for us to inject a router into the application that will decide where to route data depending on some sort of business rules that you'll supply to it. These are just two really simple examples of components that you can wire up with Camel. Camel is an incredibly powerful piece of architecture, and I'm sure in the coming months We'll be talking lots more about it. If you're interested in this, I mean, we'd love to talk to you. We've got loads of other ideas for how this can get used. We're happy to talk to you about how we're using it today. I really do think this is going to be a game changer for people who are building up great big health data fabric architectures in their own organizations. So very cool stuff. I'm very excited for where we're going to go with all of this. Moving on, lots of enhancements to MDM. We continue work on a project that we are calling internally the MDM 2.0 project. You may sometimes hear us talk about MDM 2.0. What we're doing is basically the next generation of the MDM product. We, of course, introduced MDM, I think, somewhere around 3 years ago into the product. We've had tons of feedback since then. Lots of people have done all kinds of neat things with it. But we've also had lots of people say to us, you know, there's a whole lot more that we could be doing with this system if it did X or Y or Z. I'll use that. I'll try and use that appropriately. So we've been adding all sorts of new stuff. Let's talk about that for a bit. First off, we now have the ability to use custom search parameters as a part of the match fields that we use in our linking algorithms. So when you're configuring the system to do automatic linking, previously you could only use built-in FHIR search parameters as a part of the match criteria. You can now use custom search parameters as well. We've introduced a new JSON-based, JSON and REST-based API that you can use to programmatically call and get operational metrics about how the MDM is performing. That's like how many matches is it made, how many links is it made, those types of things. The operation that we call the MDM link history, which you can use to query the history of links and their changes between resources. Now has a bunch of new parameters that you can add to it when you're calling it, and that allows you to refine what comes back. Essentially, if you want only links that have to do with one of the targets of the link, you can now filter it down that way. And importantly, to anyone who is tuning their MDM, the MDM clear operation, which wipes out all of the links in the system, is now much, much faster. It takes advantage of a batch process that's quite similar to how our $expunge operation works. That may seem like a minor point. I mean, being able to wipe all of the data from your MDM is hopefully something that people aren't going to need to do terribly often in production. But I will tell you, as if you're tuning your MDM the first time you're trying to set it up, you probably got loads of data. You're trying to test the impact of various rules and changes to your rules to see what is optimal in terms of MDM, MDM configuration. Being able to really quickly wipe all of the MDM data without wiping the underlying data is a great thing. And the MDM clear operation now does that much faster than it used to. So there we go. The other part of the MDM functionality, not the execution engine, but the UI, continues to see development as well, and we've got a bunch more plans for that in the coming months as well. Among things that we have added in this release for the MDM UI, we've now got much more fine-grained permissions underpinning the various roles, the various functions that you can do in the UI. This basically allows you to break up your users. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you might divide your users, but a common setup is that you might have a role of MDM admin for people that access the administrative functions, and an MDM data steward for people who manage the links but don't actually need to configure the MDM itself. And we've now got the ability for you to set that type of scheme up. We've now got the ability for you to modify and set up and tweak your exclusion criteria for matching right through the UI, so that continues to improve our configurability through that UI. We have now set things up so that any changes you make through that UI will all be logged in the audit trail. So that's obviously a very good thing as you start to roll the UI out to your administrative users. And I think most importantly, the whole philosophy of the MDM UI, which we are really making great strides at, and I think is very evident in this release of the product. The UI now completely supports what we're calling a no-code approach to tuning, testing, and optimizing your rules. So in other words, you can now use MDM and configure it and test your rules and evaluate your rules and iterate on them and all that good stuff without needing to go in and program things, without needing to go and edit underlying configuration files and things like that. And I think that this is a major milestone in basically making this system ready for much larger deployments. So we're pretty excited about that. A feature that we spoke about probably about a year ago when we initially introduced this feature is a thing we're calling FHIR server watermarking or response watermarking. Response watermarking basically injects a little watermark into every resource that it returns. The idea being that if you've ever got a breach and your resources end up sort of disclosed in ways that you didn't expect, if you've got a copy of the data that was exposed, a little watermark has been added to it that gives some details about where, what was potentially the vector that the breach occurred. In other words, like what was the timestamp that the data was released, what smart client did it get released to, that type of thing. We now include details about the server environment that was used to expose the data as well. And with that, we're now recommending that anyone who's got internet-facing APIs, so in other words, if you have stood up FHIR-based APIs that are exposed out to the public internet, we encourage you to consider activating this feature. You may well never need it. Hopefully, you'll never need it. But if you've ever got a data breach that you need to investigate, this is one more potential data point that might help you investigate how did the breach happen. And that, of course, is always a good thing. So we will encourage people to consider activating watermarking. People who take advantage of FHIR's rich capability for resource versioning will get a couple of interesting new features. First off, you can now completely disable resource version history in the system. Obviously, one of the great features about FHIR is that it keeps complete history of changes to resources over time, and that's a really good thing in most cases. But there are cases where you just don't care. Maybe you don't ever want to see all the previous versions of a resource, and maybe you know that all those changes are just going to eat up disk space that you'd rather not consume. If that's the case, there's now the ability both in HAPI FHIR and in Smile through configuration to disable that, so that we will no longer track changes to resources. We'll just only keep track of the most recent version. One change that's gone in to do with versioning, we now will, by default, and this too can be changed through configuration as well, but we'll now preserve version history, we'll now preserve version references on a couple of individual fields. Most fields in FHIR, we will delete the version portion of a reference because typically in FHIR, you don't actually want references between resources that point to a specific version of a resource. And again, of course, you can always override this through configuration if your needs are different than our defaults. But by default, the three fields that are listed here will now automatically preserve the version in any references that you save your resources with. For people that are taking advantage of multi-tenancy and partitioning capabilities, if you are using what we call patient ID partition mode, patient ID partition mode is an awesome feature for people that are trying to do really large-scale deployments of a FHIR repository. They allow us to put all of the data belonging to any individual patient. So the patient resource, any observations for that patient, any encounters for that patient, et cetera, will all go on the same partition within the system, and that, of course, allows for much faster disk I/O when you're trying to retrieve all of that data. It certainly can take quite a bit of load off the database if your queries tend to be oriented around individual patients. One of the limitations previously of that mode were that you could only ever do searches for one patient or subject ID. That limitation has now been removed, which makes patient ID partition mode rather a fair bit more powerful. So that's a really good thing. One other thing that's been hotly requested in the last while as people start to roll out multi-tenant FHIR servers increasingly, where they've got multiple customers of their own, all stored within different partitions of a HAPI FHIR or Smile CDR FHIR repository. The generated capability statement can now include the partition information if you have configured it to do so as well. So that should be useful for some people. One interesting change that we have made, the underscore language search parameter is once again available in the system. There's kind of a funny story here. The original release of FHIR DSTU1, had this search parameter called underscore language, and we implemented support for it. We'd supported it. It basically indexed the resource.language field and allowed you to search for it. However, it took up a bunch of space that we've received lots of feedback that people were annoyed that it was taking up space in their database, and they were never going to use it because lots of people never search using underscore language. And just to make things even more complicated, FHIR removed support for underscore language in their DSTU2 release. So for the longest time, it was up until maybe a year ago, we had support for this underscore language search parameter, even though the FHIR standard had long since removed it. And so we were eating up disk space for a feature that didn't even exist in FHIR anymore. So we finally removed it about a year ago and stopped indexing that. And wouldn't you know it, then our FHIR R5 came along, and FHIR R5 brought the language search parameter back. So we removed it, and then FHIR brought it back. So that was really complicated. So what we've done is we've now brought it back, but through configuration. So both HAPI and Smile, assuming you turn it on, will now support underscore language once again. But you do have to enable it. We leave it as disabled by default, based on a fair bit of feedback we've received that tells us that most people don't want this, but the people that do want it quite badly. So there we go. Up to you entirely. For people that are taking advantage of code validation, of resource validation, we now have a new configuration option called the code display mismatch policy, which configures how we will behave if you have if your codes are valid, but the display name doesn't match what the code system thinks they should be. In older versions of HAPI and Smile, we ignored this. And then in order to be more conformant, we tightened this up to FHIR's recommendations of producing an error, but we had people who complained that this was too strict. So this is now up to you. You can decide, should this be an error? Should it be a warning? Should it be ignored completely? We obviously recommend you go with FHIR's recommendation of making it an error, but that is up to you to decide. Users of our JavaScript execution environment, which allows you to do things like authorization scripts, interceptor scripts in some cases. Lots of parts of Smile CDR take advantage of JavaScript scripting. We've made two interesting enhancements to that environment. First off, we have now got a mode that you do need to enable, and this is disabled by default, but is going to be super useful, I think, for some people. This allows us to automatically reload scripts the second you save them. Previously, if you made any changes to your scripts, you had to save the script in your module configuration and then restart the module, which obviously takes a little bit of time every time you do it, and was kind of a pain for anyone who was trying to iterate on their scripts, because it meant your dev build test cycle took a while your modules all restarted. That now can be tightened quite a bit. Effectively, if you enable this option, then the moment you save the script, it will be automatically reloaded in your live Smile environment, which means you can much more quickly get to testing it. And I suspect this is going to be incredibly popular with people who are developing JavaScript scripts. One other thing we've added is automatic linting. So linting effectively is the ability for us to run what's called a linter. And a linter is a little system that goes through and looks for potential errors and cleans up your scripts. You can see there's a little screenshot here that's showing the linter in action. This will happen automatically. It doesn't need to be enabled or anything. So as soon as you save a script, the linter will run now, which is quite a useful thing, I think, as well. Bunch of enhancements as far as security goes. First off, the HL7 over HTTP listener. So this is for people that want to receive HL7 v2 messages using the HTTP protocol. This is a protocol that was actually developed by the HAPI project long ago, before we even had support for FHIR. We have now got support for HTTP basic authentication, and most importantly, HTTP basic authentication that goes through the entire native security stack of Smile CDR. So this means it uses whatever inbound security module you've got configured, takes advantage of our authentication capabilities, our authorization capabilities. Everything will be done under the authority of the account that is authenticated. So this is a great big boon for setting up security for anyone who's doing HO7 over HTTP. No more writing interceptors for adding your security there, which is a really good thing. Callback scripts. Anytime you're writing callback scripts, you've now got access to a whole bunch more information in your on token generating function. This is we're getting kind of into the technical weeds here, but this function gets called anytime we're generating a new access token that's going to get returned to the client as a part of your smart authentication flows. This is needed for anyone, among other things, who is implementing the IHE IUA, the Internet User Authorization Profile. So if you're trying to set up the IUA profile in Smile, and that's a thing that we have spent a bunch of time doing and testing over the last while ourselves, you've now got a bunch more data available that enables you to fully successfully implement that profile. Finally, we've added a new point cut to the outbound security module, which allows you, if you're using federated auth, so you're federating our smart capabilities with a third-party OIDC server, and in fact, if you've got multiple third-party OIDC servers you're federating to, previously you were basically required a requirement was that the user would get prompted for which of the third-party systems did you want to federate to, or did you want to use for, the specific authentication you were doing. And that's generally how people want it to work, but we have had requests for, could we make that programmatic? And so a new point cut has been added that allows that to be programmatic now, which should be a good thing. Big news on the CDS hooks front. So as a part of our merger with Alphora, bringing in our clinical reasoning team, one of the things that we realized is that we basically had duplicate CDS hooks frameworks. We had a CDS hooks framework that was produced by Alphora prior to them joining Smile, and we had a version that was produced by Smile. These were interesting in that they were similar in scope, but they didn't overlap completely. There were features that were unique to each. They also differed in their licensing. One was open source, the other was not. The Alphora solution was open source. The Smile was a part of Smile, so it was not a part of our open source offerings. We've now harmonized these, and the harmonized CDS hook framework is complete. It is an open source framework, and it is fully available and GA as of now. So that's, I think, a really good thing. On top of merging the frameworks, we have added a couple of new features over the last quarter that I think are worth talking about. First off, we've added these two registries, the CR, the Clinical Reasoning Services Registry, and the CR Discovery, the Reasoning Discovery Services Registry, that allow you to do dynamic runtime registration. So in other words, if you need your system to allow at runtime without needing restarts, the registration of new CDS hook services, you can now do those straight into the registries at runtime. And then taking advantage of that, we have added an implementation of the CDS on FHIR IG. So CDS on FHIR is a really neat implementation guide. Oh, I've got a word missing there. That should say implementation guide, that allows you to register plan definition workflows dynamically in the system, and that takes advantage of the functions above using this new operation called $apply. So that has been added to the framework as well. So I think we'll see probably some neat use of that over the next while. Anyone who's using Docker, if you're a developer developing against Smile and taking advantage of the Docker builds that we produce, if you're a Mac user, one of the giant pains, and we know this has been a pain for a long time, has been the fact that our native Docker images do not support the ARM64 architecture. That has finally been fixed. So I know personally I'm a Mac user. I am extremely excited about this myself. I know we've heard this loud and clear from lots of other people as well. We've known it's been wanted for a long time. There's been a bunch of architectural challenges and reasons that we haven't done it right away, but we have finally got that finished. So as of this release, as of the ZED release, we do support ARM64. Very good thing, I think. Users of HL7v2 outbound capabilities may be excited to hear that we've now got a new capability for generating HL7 outbound outbound transactions. We've had we've had the ability to generate outbound HL7 v2 messages for a good while now. But one of the limitations has been that your generation is very tightly bound to the resource types that are being changed in the system. So it was very easy for you to set up an outbound feed that would produce, for example, HL7 ADT AO8 messages whenever an encounter got updated. That was a thing that was fairly easy to do. The problem is FHIR and its REST API is entirely around database changes. I mean, that's kind of the nature of REST APIs. They're all about changes in state to data. Whereas HL7v2 is not about, the transactions in HL7v2 are not about changes in state to data. They're about business workflows and business activities. The triggers, your AO1, your A28. These are about business actions that may reflect changes in data, but more importantly, reflect things that have happened in the real world, workflows that have been taking place. And those workflows may not be obvious in the changes of data that you're making. So this kind of led to some weird mismatches where you do your best to configure the system, but it might not actually send out the HL7v2 message you intended. This new system called custom resource conversion allows you a whole bunch more flexibility in terms of which messages you send out. So if you're building a system that needs to automatically send out v2 messages to interoperate with perhaps legacy systems, even though you're thinking natively in FHIR, this might well be a super useful feature to you. Moving on to AppSphere, we continue to work on the AppSphere product, which is, of course, a great part of the health data fabric. A bunch of things have been added here. First off, detailed partition descriptions are available both in AppSphere and in the server metadata. Previously, we only enabled descriptions of partitions in the developer portal, but we've had a bunch of requests for this information to be published in the capability statements and things like that. This is typically needed by people who are doing G10 certification, the certification which is quite common in the US. If you're standing up a FHIR repository in a multi-tenant environment and you need to have information about your partitions available through your capability statement, that will now happen. So that will be useful, I think, to lots of people. We've now got the ability to do password resets and email change supports and things like that for your third-party developers. This is something we've always known we needed, but we just had to sort of schedule the time to get there. I think this is going to very much improve the convenience for anyone who is using AppSphere as an integrated console for launching apps and helping out developers trying to get their apps into your galleries. This should be a super useful thing. And then finally, we now support the use of non-AppSphere galleries. So what does that mean? If you are an organization who has its own app gallery that is sort of a public-facing gallery of applications that can connect into your APIs, and you want to continue using your own gallery, but you want to take advantage of the other capabilities that AppSphere provides. These are things like the developer portal, the admin console. We've now got APIs that you can use to integrate your own galleries with the rest of the AppSphere capabilities. We've got point cuts that will help with that as well. And this should, I think, very much improve the experience of trying to integrate AppSphere into bigger, broader architectures that include some existing functionality. This too has been a popular request over the last while, and I know it's been quite a bit of work for the team who implemented it. So thank you to them for that. Moving on from the CDR product, let's move on to the clinical reasoning product family. First off, we are now, in this release, we're very excited to say we are officially making the digital quality measures, or DQM module, available as a part of this Smile release for any customers that want to get their hands on trying to start with its capabilities and maybe even using it for the 2024 quality payment program performance year. The DQM solution comprises a module in the Smile Health Data Fabric that contains key components like a DQM engine for measure evaluations, a care gaps engine for identifying care gaps prospectively, and a reporting engine for building FHIR and QPP JSON reports for submissions to CMS, and DQM APIs that will make the solution easy to use and integrate with other applications. This will allow you to leverage our inventory of quality measures and DQM executable content that you can use out of the box for quality payment program, and that serves family medicine, emergency medicine, oncology, and other clinical specialties. And finally, last but not least, you can streamline your quality reporting workflows end-to-end with our Smart on FHIR app, which is coming soon. So I guess that's not quite in this release, but coming up in the next quarter. And that'll be deployed separately and take advantage of our DQM APIs to organize, visualize, and sequence quality reporting activities. So, as I say, we are super excited to be releasing the DQM module as a part of the Smile platform. I know this has been a ton of work over the last, not just quarter, this has been on the works for quite a while. We are really excited to see what people do with this. So if you're interested in taking this for a spin, by all means, get in touch with us. We know that now that many of you, we've got many customers that have deployed FHIR-based health data fabric architectures in their organizations. Having the data available just means there's a world of opportunity out there for you to take advantage of that data and do cool things with it. Digital quality measures is just the perfect example of that. There is so much you could do with this solution. So we would love to talk to you about what's possible there. One final thing that I want to talk about, I mentioned this last release. In fact, I've been talking about this for, I think, upwards of a year now. The migration to the new Jakarta APIs. If you're not familiar with Jakarta APIs, this is a change that was kind of thrust on us by the broader Java community, where Java effectively has been renaming a bunch of its APIs from JavaX to Jakarta. And this is sort of prompted libraries to be forced to upgrade. We are no different, and we've heard loud and clear from our community, including through a community survey that we launched at the start of the year, that our users would like us to move up to the new Jakarta APIs. We have been hard at work doing that. I did announce last release, so I announced back in August that we would be making this conversion, completing this conversion for our November release. Unfortunately, we did not manage to get that completed in time for this release. This is not a case of us not wanting to. This just turned out to be an absolutely monumental task. It turned out to be just vastly more work than we were anticipating. I'm not going to get into all of the things that made it take a lot of time. I'm already running late during this webinar today, but it really did turn out to be a whole lot more work than I anticipated it being. So we have now decided that we are, at this point, we've got the work complete. We do consider it ready for release, but we considered it too big a change to be I don't know, to be releasing in this release in good faith. It was just a massive code change that we need time to test and validate and make sure that we're not introducing regressions with. So we're going to take the next few months making sure that that happens. That said, we do have the work complete. So any HAPI-FHIR users that want to try out the new Jakarta-based HAPI-FHIR can do that today if they build HAPI-FHIR locally using the branch. And we published the name of that branch and all the details a few times on our mailing list, so I won't mention that here, but if anyone's interested, of course, get in touch. We are planning on merging all of this and publishing official snapshot builds of HAPI-FHIR during the weekend of December 2, 2023. So 2 weeks from this weekend, we will be merging this in. We're giving ourselves a weekend to get it merged. As I say, it's hard to understate just how much work this is. It involves coordinated releases of 5 different libraries, so it really is a big, complicated thing to get this done. And thank you to everybody who's helped out with that. It really has been a ton of work. Our next release, so HAPI-FHIR and Smile CDR, in our Feb 2024 release, we will support the new Jakarta APIs. That is going to happen. One other thing I'll mention as a part of this, we realized as a part of doing the Jakarta APIs that another big monumental change that's happening that we just cannot ignore because it's impacting us as well. The Java world seems to be moving much more towards keeping up to date with JDK releases, and several of the libraries that we require are no exception. So they're sort of forcing this change on us, and I think it's a good change, actually. Traditionally, Java applications often would stick with very old releases of the JDK, and we've often seen that you get much better performance using our library on newer versions anyhow, so we've been recommending that people use JDK 17 for a long time now. I will say now, we are, as of February 2024, so as of our next GA release, we are going to require JDK 17 as the minimum version of Java in order to run Smile. We will continue to support JDK 11 for one more release on HAPI-FHIR. That will give people a little bit more time to prepare for it on that side, because we know there's a few HAPI-FHIR users that depend on older releases of the JDK. And then as of May, actually that says 7.0, that should say 7.1. As of our 7.1 release of HAPI-FHIR, we will require a minimum of JDK 17 as well. So that change is coming to anyone who is using HAPI-FHIR. Finally, we have never really spoken about our sister library, HAPI HL7v2, on this webinar. I'm doing that today only because we have a new release. HAPI HL7v2 is largely a dormant project these days. We don't actually tend to touch it much. That's not because we don't care about it. We actually use it quite a bit ourselves in our own products, and we know lots of people continue to use it. But the HL7v2 standard itself has slowed down. Most of the activity around HL7 these days is with the FHIR standards. There's not a whole lot that we need to do with the v2 library, but we do occasionally make changes to it. We are in parallel, as of this release, releasing 2 versions of HAPI-FHIR. Those are HAPI-FHIR 2.4.1 and 2.5.1. These 2 releases are identical, with one exception. The 2.4.1 release uses the old JAVAX packages. The 2.5 release uses the new Jakarta packages. So depending on whether you want to upgrade or not, the HAPI HL7v2 is the first of our products to make this migration. Among things that we are introducing in this release, the first thing I know lots of people have been complaining about for years, our test panel, which is this lovely little application that lets you test HL7v2 based applications. You can send messages and inspect messages and look at a little hierarchy of the data in those messages. One of its limitations is it required a much older JDK because of some changes that happened in Java 9. It is now possible to use the test panel on modern JDKs all the way up to JDK 21, which is exciting, I know, for me personally, and I think for lots of others as well. Most importantly in this release, this just goes to show, I mean, just when you think you're done, you're never done. Somebody, and we very much thank them for this, reported a security vulnerability in the XML parser. And we know, I mean, a lot of people don't use XML parsing for HL7v2. It's a fairly uncommon feature, I would say, actually. But some people do, and somebody did find that it was vulnerable to XXE, which is a remote execution, actually a fairly significant security vulnerability. So if you use XML parsers with HL7v2, we do recommend you upgrade to the latest version of the HAPI FHIR library. Very good thing to do. Smile CDR users, incidentally, do not need to worry about this, even if you're on an older version, because we don't support the XML flavor of HL7v2 anyhow. But if you are, this is a thing you should worry about. We will be filing for a CVE shortly, and as a part of that, we will very much be thanking the team that just disclosed this vulnerability to us. That was a very good thing for them to do, and we thank them for that. And I will say there's a number of other enhancements to stability of the HL7v2 server in this release, so certainly worth considering upgrading if you're a HAPI v2 user. A couple of other things I will say before we wrap this up, and boy, this is we're a little bit over schedule here. We will be, our team will be at a couple of events in the next while. The Vive conference, which happens in February in Los Angeles. Come and see us. We'd love to talk to you. And of course, HIMSS. Everybody goes to HIMSS. That's we've got a love it and hate it relationship with HIMSS myself. We will be there. It happens in March. We will, we'd love to talk to you at either of those events, and we promise we'll have lots of good stuff. If you want to come see us, come get some stickers, come talk to us about how we might work together. We would love to chat. We've had a couple of awards. We gotta brag a little bit. We were listed as number 41 on the Globe and Mail Canada's top growing companies for 2023. We're very excited for that. And once again this year, we are on the Deloitte Fast 50 and North American Fast 500. So we're quite excited for that as well. One final thing, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about before moving on to our usual Q&A. We are launching a thing that we're calling the HAPI FHIR Holiday Promotion. So what's this all about? The idea here is if you are a HAPI FHIR user who is interested in thinking about moving up to the Smile CDR platform, in other words, you're using our open source today, but you're interested in taking the big commercial product out for a spin, seeing if you might take advantage of some of the features that are available in the commercial product and seeing how they might work for you. We would love to talk to you about that. We are offering trial licenses if you'd like to give that a shot. So if you're interested in doing that, there's a QR code here you can click on. You can scan. We'll be posting lots of details about this on our website as well. So we would love to talk to you if you're a HAPI FHIR user who is interested in taking Smile CDR for a spin. And with that, I am, going to fight with my keyboard for a minute, and there we go. So if you would like a copy of a release playlist, there's the webinar, or there's the URL for that. If you're a HAPI FHIR user, of course, as always, we'd love to talk to you on our mailing list. And if you're a social media user of any kind, we'd love to see you there. And with that, I would love to invite Megan Pete to the stage, the virtual stage. We would love to take any questions that anyone has.
Hello. So yes, now is the time for our Q&A. We don't currently have any in the chat, but please feel free if you have any questions. There we go. Thank you, Zim Happens. Just feel free to put them in and I'll read them out for you. Our first question from Zim Happens is, does Smile have natural language processing capabilities?
Oh, this is a fun question. So we don't have any built-in NLP capabilities. Certainly, that's a thing that we've spoken about tons. We've spent lots of time actually evaluating NLP capabilities, as well as, all kinds of other AI technologies as well. I know in one of the future or upcoming releases, I'm very excited to get to talk about some of the work that we've been doing, working with large language models that will make a bunch of our features, a bunch of our modules and capabilities all the more exciting once we start rolling out those features, because a lot of that stuff is in the R&D stage right now. I will say, there's basically, the short answer is no. There's nothing built in for NLP. Our view has always been, though, that we are here to power that type of thing. I know that we've got lots of customers that take advantage of Smile's ability to get data in and make data available in order to power NLP. We've got lots of people that have built solutions that take advantage of it. But I guess the short answer is no, there's nothing built into the product today. If you've got something in mind, though, I think what's more important is we'd love to talk to you about how you might find this useful. We do have an R&D team investing all kinds of new technologies, certainly including NLP capabilities. We would love to hear from you about how, what we might be able to make better for you. Like what could we be doing that we're not doing today? And certainly if that includes NLP, we'd love to talk to you about it.
All right, thanks, James. I keep hearing rumors from things that group is investigating, and I'm always excited to see hear what they come up with. We don't have any more questions in the chat. Like, as anyone has any, please feel free to type them out. In the meantime, James, is there anything, my go-to question, that you're excited about, looking forward to, that's upcoming work or work that you've recently done?
Yeah, I mean, I'll even pick up on a theme. I think we talked about this last time, and I continue to be excited about it. I'm in love with the international patient summary. I think it's a game changer for a million reasons. I've spoken about it lots, including on these webinars, including on various panels and talks and things like that. I think it's going to fundamentally change the way that we exchange data, at the international scale, which is ultimately where we need to go. We continue to work on it, and just to give a tiny little hint about what's coming, we are working on, enhancing our support for the IPS, and more importantly, rolling out some support for smart health links, which is this amazing capability that you can use to exchange IPS documents, among other things. So watch in future webinars for more discussion around our work with smart health links and the international patient summary. I think that we're just getting started with how much cool stuff you can do around there.
Cool. I'm looking forward to hearing more. And it ties into the whole better global health hashtag very, very well. We've got another question from Zim Happens, just asking, can you do bulk imports of non-standard XML data?
Oh, that's fun. Okay, so let's say this. Like bulk import, I guess there's two potential definitions for that. I mean, there is, of course, the FHIR bulk data access implementation guide. And FHIR bulk access, that implementation guide is a FHIR IG. And it very explicitly requires the use of MD-JSON today as the format that you import. So, it doesn't really have any capabilities, at least nothing that has been outlined in any of the drafts of it that are out there today, that would allow you to import arbitrary data into the system. So if you're talking bulk export, or bulk import rather, in the FHIR bulk data access IG sense, then it's got to be MD-JSON as of today. However, if you've got a bunch of arbitrary data, and that might be XML data that has some arbitrary payload, that might be, random JSON data, might even be data that looks like FHIR but has problems with it, might be CSV data that you've exported from a data warehouse or whatever else. We do have a couple of ways you can get that data into the system today. The two that I will say have existed for a while now that are worth talking about are our ETL module, which can be used to do ETL jobs on data from a number of formats, including the ones that I just listed, and that certainly would include arbitrary XML data as well. We've also got our channel import module. This, I think, is traditionally the very best way to get data into the system. This allows you to dump your data onto a Kafka stream and then have Smile convert it to FHIR and ingest it into the repository completely asynchronously and as quickly as possible and as scalably as possible, taking advantage of all of the scalability advantages you get through using Kafka. So that, as always, is just a really, really exciting way of getting data in. We've seen lots of people get giant amounts of all kinds of arbitrary data into the system, taking advantage of that. The other thing that just completely changes that game is the introduction of our CAML module. I think that it's been said a couple of times internally within our team are that, with CAML in the picture, it may well be that the things like channel import and ETL, like they may not even need to exist. I mean, I'm certainly not saying we're going to remove them. We know that we've got people that are using them today, and we've got no intention of pulling the rug out. But the point being made there is that you could actually implement both of those and more, and much more powerfully, using CAML's native capabilities built on top of Smile. So I could certainly see people taking advantage of CAML to support all of the things that I've just talked about. And CAML, for that matter, has got the ability for you to run timers and go and fetch data on a schedule, automatically convert it, maybe route it appropriately, ingest it into the system in a thread, a multi-threaded way. Like there's just so much you can do with the CAML infrastructure that will make all of that stuff that much easier. So I mean, the short answer is, as long as we're not talking specifically about the MD-JSON requirement, yes, absolutely, it's possible to import in mass quantities arbitrary XML data.
All right, thank you so much. That was a very, very comprehensive walkthrough on ways to get XML into Smile there. We don't really have any more questions. We've got some good jobs and some discussion on how to pronounce the letter Z or Z, or zebras or zebras. So I'm just going to sneak in another one of my own. You were talking about like the Jakarta API migration stuff and how it wasn't quite ready for this release, but it'll be ready soon. Did you want to speak to any of those like challenges that kind of surprised you between the like August release and now?
Yeah, happy to. And I will say, I actually don't see the chat comments, so I do not know what's being discussed there, but I find the zebra versus zebra thing hilarious. I don't know that I've ever heard a Canadian say the word zebra, other than if they're referring to, I mean, if you walk around the UK, you'll often see, you see pedestrian crossings there that they call hump zebra crossings, and you see that all over the place. And that's just, the whole thing sounds hilarious to me. So there we go. If you're talking about that, maybe I'll say zebra, but other than that, I've never even used the word zebra, not zebra. Just ingrained in our psyche here. So there you go. Getting on to the Jakarta API. So yeah, I mean, here's the thing. What I'm planning on doing. I at some point, there's a whole lot of technical detail that honestly I could spend an hour talking about in this webinar, and it would be interesting probably to a handful of people and painfully boring to the rest. I've got a plan in the works right now to do a webinar that will be focused entirely on that. That nobody would need to attend because it's really just going to be fluff information. But I think there's a lot interesting there that might be interesting to people who are sort of paying attention to the guts of how HAPI-FHIR gets developed, and might want to see all the details about what made this Jakarta API difficult, and what led to us having to postpone it a quarter and all of that. So watch for more details on that. I will be posting some information about a webinar. I've actually got the slides ready, and we've done a run through internally for our internal team. So we've got lots of detail there. I will say, the short version of it is that it is the most incredible cascading chain of upgrades required, that it's hard to understate just how big a change it was. Upgrading Jakarta meant that we had to upgrade the Spring library, and that's actually the main reason we wanted to do it, is because we had lots of people that were HAPI-FHIR users who wanted to upgrade Spring and couldn't unless we made this change. And then once we upgraded Spring, we had to upgrade to the next major Hibernate version, because only Hibernate 6 is compatible with Spring 6 and vice versa. And that then therefore is required if you're going to make this change. Hibernate 6 removes support for all kinds of features we're using, including the way that dialects are written, the way that custom dialects are written. The way that you export the database schema completely broke, so we had to write a new plugin to export the database schema, so that had to happen. Upgrading Spring meant that we had to upgrade Spring's tests framework, and that meant that we had to take advantage of a new version of the Jetty web server, which broke all of our unit tests, and we had to rewrite literally every unit test that used a web server in HAPI-FHIR to deal with that change. And the list goes on and on and on. It's astonishing. Any HAPI-FHIR users who really want to see any of this for themselves, I mean, I will encourage you. I've posted, there's discussions on our mailing list. There's a ticket that is very, very regularly getting commented on in our issue tracker about the Jakarta APIs. I posted a link to the pull request that has the changes on the HAPI-FHIR side of this, and there is an equivalent, of course, internal one for our Smile community as well. The HAPI-FHIR change, if you just look at the size of that pull request, the number of things that had to change, I think that alone will sort of help to paint a picture of just what a massive change this has been. I will say I am super, super excited for it. It's an unquestionably positive change that we're making here. I mean, every change we've had to make is positive. It makes the code base cleaner. It makes our dependency tree cleaner. We're taking advantage of lots of performance enhancements in the new versions of Spring and Hibernate, security enhancements in the new version of Spring Security. So there's all kinds of reasons that this is a good change. I am really, really excited for it. But I mean, any change that touches as many lines of code as it does comes with risks as well, and that is fundamentally the reason that we've decided to defer to February. So I do, I can't. I guess I didn't say this before, and I should. I do apologize to anyone who's waiting on this change. I know it's been a long time coming, but please do know that we are doing our best to get it in a cautious but quick method anyway.
Thank you. I certainly didn't mean to ask a question. That was an entire webinar's worth of answers in like the last 5 minutes of our release launch there. But I am looking forward to learning more, and it does sound like you've been doing very thorough, very careful job. But yeah, we don't have any more questions in the chat. We do have some people saying hi, but I want to thank you so much for your time and your presentation. I think we will wrap it up here unless you have any other last minute tidbits you wish to share with us. But if not, thanks to everyone for coming. Thank you, James, for all of your presentation, all of your works coming in on the last day of your vacation as well. That's dedication to Smile and the HAPI community, and now the HAPI V2 one as well today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We will talk again in 3 months. Bye-bye.